Tasha Hoover is an ordained elder in the Free Methodist Church and currently serves as the community life pastor at Storehouse Church in Plymouth Meeting. She went on to work at SAP as a training specialist in the education department for 4 years before returning to ministry at her current position. Her passion could be summed up in 2 words: Jesus and people. Welcome, Tasha.
Hi there. This is exciting. I'm thrilled to be here with you today. Like Paul said, my name is Tasha. I'm the pastor of community life at Storehouse Church in Plymouth Meeting, and I am an extrovert. I love people. I love to be around people. I love to be in relationship. One of my favorite things, as corny as it sounds, is sitting down with somebody over a good cup of coffee or a cup of tea, my British heritage, and just asking questions. I love asking questions. I'm curious about people. So I want to know how they're wired. I want to know why they dream what they dream. I want to know what their passions are, what their values are. I want to know how they grew up. I want to know what they like to do for hobbies. I mean, I'm just generally curious about people. And even for me, someone who is an extrovert and loves being around people and being in relationship, I also recognize that when we say loving others, it is extremely difficult. It is really, really hard to love others. Can I get an amen? It is hard to love others. And I think sometimes we say this so casually. We say, love God, love others. And it becomes almost like white noise. Like it doesn't really mean anything anymore. And so we've taken the meaning out of what it means to love people. So we either look at this word love and we say, oh, you know, I'm doing that, it's just fine. Or we look at it and we actually understand what loving means, and we recognize, how can I possibly do this? We scratch our heads wondering how we can actually love the people that God has placed in our life. But that is what God has called us to do, is to love the people that he has placed in our lives, even the most difficult to love. And so I just the other day, there was, or actually I should say the other week, there was a woman at our church, her name's, I'll say Kelly for the sake of the story. And she came to me to ask my oh so wise pastoral advice. And she said, you know, Tasha, I work in this big corporation. I have several people that report to me, and there's one that just has it out for me. I mean, she does not, she just has something against me. She is speaking ill about me to my colleagues. She's talking about me to the person I report to. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about me that she just has a beef with. And it's I don't know how to love her. And I know that Jesus has called me to love this woman. I know that she has pain in her life. I know that she is hurting, but it is really, really hard for me to love her, because all I want to do is just give her a taste of her own medicine. And so she said, Tasha, what would you do in this situation? And so I know many of you who are in situations like that. Maybe it's not with somebody that reports to you, but maybe it's with a colleague. Maybe it's somebody in your own family, let's say, that's difficult to love. But all of us have those people that we just say, how, God, how am I supposed to love this person? Now I'm going to talk about 2 different things that we can consider when navigating the complexities of loving others. And the first one is this. It's increasing our self-awareness. So we all have a level of awareness of what stuff we have going on in our lives. We all have some sort of level of awareness, but do you know that your level of awareness is probably not as sufficient as it could be? That maybe there might be some things that are happening in your life that you're not actually aware of. And so what we need to do as Christ followers is pursue self-awareness. And it involves several things. It involves asking hard questions about applying biblical truths that we learn about to our lives. So hard questions like, how can I be quick to speak and slow to anger? How can I be angry and not sin? How can I watch my heart above all else, knowing that's where that life flows from? How can I speak truth in love? How can I be a true peacemaker? How can I not bear false witness against my neighbor? In other words, how can I not get into these gossip circles? How can I get rid of all this bitterness, rage, or envy? How can I be aware of my own triggers, things that other people are bringing out in me that it just triggers something? And how can I increase my self-awareness for those triggers? So the first thing we do is we ask those hard questions, and we ask God to reveal to us areas in which he's asking us to grow up. It says in Ephesians 14 that we are called, 4:15, that we are called to grow up in all aspects. God asks us to grow up in all aspects. And so we ask God, reveal to us areas in which we need to grow up. Ask yourself those hard questions. Where am I seeing bitterness, envy, rage? Where am I recognizing that there's triggers? Something's happening to me when somebody provokes something in me. Why is that happening? We ask ourselves those hard questions. The other thing that we do is that, and I don't know if you've done this before, but 360 reviews are so wonderful. If you haven't done a 360 review, I'd highly encourage it. It's not wonderful in the sense that you'll enjoy it. It's wonderful in the sense that God will use it to grow you up in all aspects. And so what a 360 review is you ask those that you trust around you who are closest to you to speak on your strengths and your weaknesses, to speak on areas in which they recognize what motivates you, to speak on areas in which you maybe think that you've got it all together, but other people can see other things. And so if you need a 360 review, if you need those questions, please come see me afterwards. I have a great 360 review questionnaire that you can use. But it helps increase our self-awareness. And the reason why we want to increase our self-awareness is so that we get those stumbling blocks out of the way. And when we say loving others well, we actually love them well, and we're not really just so focused on our own stuff that we can't see the other person. Or they're not triggering something in us that we're kind of speaking ill about them, or we're in anger or something over, and we're not actually confessing that to the Lord. So we increase our self-awareness so that we can love others well freely. The other thing that we do as we navigate the complexities of loving others is we recognize that conflict is inevitable. That no conflict does not mean you have a healthy relationship. Anyone who is married in this room, or anyone who has children in this room, or anyone who has a very close best friend, you know that conflict happens in a relationship. It is inevitable. So when you have conflict in a relationship, it does not mean that it's going south. It just means that God is offering you the opportunity to walk it out well. And not many people walk out conflict well in our world. And so when we think about Matthew 5:9, where it says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they can be called the children of God." Often when we think of peacemakers, we think of this idea of something without conflict. We think of something where that's just harmonious and there's nothing that's disturbing the peace. But really what it means to be a peacemaker is to be ruthless about going after peace. And the only way that you're going to do that is if you walk into the conflict. And so we don't brush it under the rug. We don't ignore the conflict. We don't do any of those things, because in actuality, what that does is it creates distance between us and the other person. And so we may say, oh, I'm not going to bring that up because I don't want to be, I don't want them to get mad at me, or I don't want it to affect our relationship. But really what's happening is not bringing it up does affect your relationship, because it creates distance with that other person. And you're no longer able to love them well as God has called you to love them. So when Kelly came to me, this woman who had this person speaking ill of her, and said, Tasha, what do I do? How do I love this person well in my context? I told her that you need to walk into that conflict, and you walk into that conflict recognizing that this person is a child of God. You walk into that conflict knowing that this person is deeply cherished and loved by their Heavenly Father. You walk into this conflict knowing the skills that you have, using the skills that you have, things like speaking and listening. We listen more and we speak less, right? We listen and we validate what the other person is saying. We reflectively listen what we hear them saying to us. When we speak for ourselves. We use I terms. We don't try and make it about, we don't use you statements. You're doing this, you're doing that. We use I statements. You use skills like stopping the narrative in your mind. So we all create these narratives. We all go around creating stories about what's going on with other people's motives. We make these assumptions about people. But what happens is that we don't allow the other person to actually be who they are called to be. We don't allow that other person to speak their experience, because we've created an assumption. We've created a narrative about them. So we stop the narrative. We stop the mind reading. We don't try and go in there and read their minds, but we ask open-ended questions. We listen well. We reflectively speak back what we hear them saying. We also use skills like clarifying our expectations. Expectations that are unmet and unsaid can wreak havoc in relationships. And so when we go into a conflict, we recognize that there's expectations at play that we're not aware of. And so there's things that are unsaid. There's things that the other person is not saying that they expect of you. So I said to Kelly, maybe this person is expecting of you as her boss to do something, be something that you just cannot be, which leads us to unrealistic expectations. There's unsaid expectations, unrealistic expectations. And then if they're not actually spoken, then they're not really agreed upon. So there's unagreed upon expectations. So you go into that conflict and you clarify the expectations, recognizing that as you do this, you ask open-ended questions, that you're going to be able to work through the conflict and love this person as God has called you to love this person. Ultimately, our perspective on people matters. So when we're working with the people in our marketplace, when we're working with people in general, when we're interacting with anyone really, I love what Paul said in the beginning, because it is exciting. The fact that we are on this earth to go about sharing the love of Christ with others is exciting, and it should get you pumped up. It should get you really pumped up to be able to bring the message of the gospel to others in your world. But we need to recognize as we're interacting with other people that they are a cherished child of God. And what we are called to do is to help them see their own beauty. We're called to help them see their own uniqueness, their own giftedness. We're called to speak that over them. And so let's go out and do just that with the people around us. Thank you.